Hi guys, and thanks for being here for episode 4 in 6 Steps to Writing a Screenplay. This time we're looking at character, and this is such a huge part of story that a lot of what we've talked about before now is really just laying foundation for what we're going to explore here. A really good way to think of story is that it's not about what treasure your hero finds at the end of the map, it's about what he learned about himself as he travelled there. You'll no doubt recall many films where at the end the hero actually sacrifices the treasure he so doggedly pursued in order to get something else, which is far more personal to him, that he didn't even know he was seeking.
Sorry about your house, Mr. Fredrickson.
You know, it's just a house.
This is what I've been talking about when I've discussed conscious and unconscious goals. You'll recall in episode 1 I explained that stories are equipment for living. We're not looking to escape life, but instead to find it. Well, here it is in play. We ourselves are filled with conscious and unconscious goals, partly because the goals we give ourselves are manageable steps towards something larger. Like how a desire for a better paid job might be motivated by a broader goal to be able to provide for and connect with your family, though in working all hours to achieve the job, with more responsibility you end up having no time to spend with them. You see how your conscious goal can often be completely at odds with your unconscious one, but we focus so hard on what's in front of us that we're blind to the rest. Well, this universality across the human condition can give us rich, complex and relatable characters, and as an audience we love to see this aspect of our own lives reflected back to us on the screen. With that in mind, consider story as nothing more than a very specifically built torture device for your protagonist. This is the extent to which they're linked. As the writer, you can keep refining both until they work perfectly together. Cast your mind back to step 1. We had a premise. What if a superhero started to lose his powers? We figured that might make a good story about vulnerability, so came our controlling idea. Vulnerability is important because it helps you connect with those around you. The moment we know we need to prove this, we know our goal needs to be accepting vulnerability, thus connecting with others. So from that moment we create our protagonist by reversing as far away from that goal as we can. With that established, our character has to be someone that specifically wants to connect with others, whether consciously or unconsciously, and doing so needs to be specifically difficult for him. So with vulnerability as the other element of our theme, it makes sense for his own ego to be what's blocking him. So you see, it's not just about coming up with an interesting journey and then throwing in a stock protagonist. Your protagonist is built specifically to demonstrate your controlling idea. There are infinite directions you can explore in terms of characteristics, traits and quirks, but the arc of your character must work in harmony with your plot. Use your theme to find your goal, and use your goal to define your protagonist. From here, your plot serves as a structure through which you uncover your protagonist's true character. And by true character we mean the real core of somebody's being, right down to their deepest held beliefs. The thing about true character is that it tends to be hidden deep underneath layer upon layer of contradictory characterization. And by characterization we mean all observable qualities of a human being, from their style of speech to their attitudes, their car, home, dress, education, simply the way they carry themselves and present themselves to the world. So think of a story as essentially saying, despite this characterization, if you look hard enough, our protagonist in fact has this true character. Despite selfish characterization, our protagonist's true character is compassionate. In practice, true character is only revealed in the difficult choices a human makes under pressure. The greater the pressure, the deeper the revelation, the truer the choice. To lie when there's no stake shows very little about a character. To tell the truth when it means great sacrifice reveals a lot. So our plot becomes a mechanism through which we provide progressively building pressures that force characters into more and more difficult dilemmas. And because of this, choice is a vital element. They cannot simply be forced to progress, they have to move forward through choice, because the choices they make as you force them into trickier and trickier dilemmas are revealing their true character. The measure of your character's desire to achieve a goal is in direct proportion to the risk he's willing to take to succeed. The greater the value he places on the goal, the greater the risk he'll take. So only by seeing what he's willing to risk do we reveal how much he values the goal. So our powerless superhero choosing to face his nemesis, knowing that it will lead to his own death but save the ones he loves, is far more powerful than if he simply came up with a clever ruse to achieve victory without ever putting himself in harm's way. The second scenario is not a dilemma. There are no stakes, he has nothing to lose, and all it reveals about him is that he's a smart guy who came up with a plan. If instead he opts to undertake the action even though it means sacrificing himself, then we know he's measured up the lives at stake and deemed them more valuable than what he's willing to risk, which is himself. Despite his selfish and egotistical characteristics in Act 1, he's come to learn the importance of others and show that his true character is utterly selfless. So how do we design dilemmas? Your natural instinct will be to use your antagonist, our hero's arch nemesis, but a simple cat and mouse chase between good and bad becomes tedious quickly. In fact, there are 3 elements of your character's world that you can look to find sources of conflict: inner, personal, and extra-personal. Inner conflict is within yourself. This is where you yourself are holding you back from your goals. Our hero has inner conflict, in that it's his own defences that have led to characterisation that pushes people away from him. So we can look to this internal struggle to find scenarios that play out this inner conflict. Perhaps a moment where he knows he would achieve a goal if he could accept defeat, but his unwillingness to show weakness is blocking him. Next is personal conflict, which is conflict with people around you, friends, family, a spouse. But it's also enemies or the guy that runs the local shop. It's conflict with individuals. Our hero has personal conflict with his arch nemesis, but will also come into conflict with his doctor love interest and his best friend housemate, for example. An argument or a fight. Finally, we have extra personal conflict, which is conflict within the environment, the infrastructure, society, conventions, social structures. Our protagonist has extra personal conflict with the alien world that surrounds him. Almost every aspect of our own day-to-day is new. He won't be used to red tape, bureaucracy. He's used to being too powerful to be affected by these things. So you can use these three areas to find sources of conflict, and use conflict where possible to build dilemmas, with which you gradually chip away at your protagonist's characterization in order to find the true character beneath. From here, there are some quick rules of thumb that can help us further flesh out our character. A protagonist must have willpower. They must have drive to pursue their goal. Don't let your character be forced forward. Remember, he must be making decisions to reveal his true character. They must have conscious desire. If you pulled your protagonist aside at any moment in the film and asked them what their desire is, they should have an answer. It may not be correct, because we know their conscious desire may in fact be at odds with their deeper unconscious desire, but they have a goal that they're consciously pursuing. Your audience will experience this journey vicariously through your protagonist. They should be empathetic, not necessarily sympathetic. Often the nice characters are the most bland. We just need to be able to relate to a shared human capacity within them. Macbeth is a monster, but we can empathise because he has a conscience and feels guilt. Guy Ducker describes the need to find a balance in your protagonist between interest and empathy. Some traits make your protagonist interesting, like proactiveness and expertise, which we see in action heroes all the time. And they can be fun to watch for a while, but they can really distance your audience from your protagonist emotionally. We can't effectively empathise with a heartless killing machine, even if they're killing the bad guys, so we need to include more humanising characteristics, like vulnerability, selflessness, and uninhibitedness. To demonstrate how much this can work, just look at how much you can warm to both the characters of Eve and Bill when they show uninhibitedness as they're fired by their boss in killing Eve.
You're fired.
You're a dick swab.
Oi!
Sorry.
Thank you, Bill.
No, I was going to call you a dick swab.
Clearly, there's going to be some reshuffling in your department.
I suggest you both leave immediately. Your things will be biked to you.
Just to be clear, Frank.
You're fired.
Excellent, thank you.
This feeling is at the heart of the audience bond. If we don't fuse a bond between the audience and the protagonist, they simply sit alongside the events of the film feeling nothing. If they empathise, then they embody the protagonist, and as they identify with their desires, they're actually rooting for their own. But of course, your film isn't just about one person, so we need to design the multitude of others to populate your world around them. And just as your protagonist is built from the structure and theme of your film, the rest of your cast are designed in response to him or her. This is because we're experiencing these characters in context of each other. They're all measuring posts for one another. Like how a drug dealer looks like a devil placed in a room of saints, but not so much when measured up to a serial killer. So you design your supporting characters as measuring posts to demonstrate important aspects of your protagonist. For example, we initially want to portray our hero as selfish. So what better way to make that stand out than to measure him up against our utterly selfless love interest doctor, who works thankless long shifts to save lives. But then we chip away at his ugly characterization to find a man who will sacrifice himself to save the city. He'll grow to at least match her altruism. This example works as juxtaposition because we know that our hero will reveal his true character and match this trait, thus becoming a juxtaposition of himself. But when illuminating more static traits, this works differently. For example, to show that he's smart, you wouldn't want to show him outsmarting a child. You'd establish an intellect and then have him better them.
We are in Buckingham Palace, at the very heart of the British nation. Sherlock Holmes, put your trousers on.
What for?
To show someone as truly immoral, you wouldn't want to show him offending a vicar. You could have much more fun having him morally offend a bank robber. Remember, your characters are measuring posts. Find characterizations or true character that you want to demonstrate to your audience, and use other characters to dramatize them. Which brings me to our antagonist, an utterly vital part of our film which I've ignored for far too long, because your antagonist is a lot of fun. There are many different ways to approach this character, but first and foremost, don't just think of them as a bad guy, because a bad guy is a plot device, whereas your protagonist and his story can only be as intellectually fascinating and emotionally compelling as the forces of antagonism make them. Your antagonist is the other main character in your film and deserves almost as much attention. One key rule: no one is the bad guy in their own story. Your antagonist does not believe he's the bad guy. He has his own goals and desires and characterizations and true character. The key is that his goals are at odds with the protagonist. For example, Thanos in Infinity War is arguably doing the wrong thing but for the right reason. He wants to end half of all life in order to save the universe.
This universe is finite, its resources finite. If life is left unchecked, life will cease to exist. It needs correction.
You don't know that!
I'm the only one who knows that. At least I'm the only one with the will to act on it.
Often we find we're sending our antagonist on the exact opposite journey to that of our protagonist. He rises as we fall, and falls as we rise. In that same way, it's often interesting to have him mirror elements of your protagonist. Often they have the same goal as one another, but for different reasons. Our villain probably wants attention in the same way our hero does, but he might have different motivating factors, or a different endgame, or different means to go about achieving it. After all, in one sense, he is a measuring post for us to size up our protagonist. For example, Llewellyn Moss and Antoine Chigurh both want the same case of money in No Country for Old Men, but Chigurh is an unknowable, unstoppable evil. He's terrifying, mysterious, and unpredictable. His methods immediately set him apart.
What's the most you ever lost in a coin toss?
Your antagonist is also a character for you to adorn with true character and contrasting characterization, like Hans Lander in Inglourious Basterds, a ruthless, calculating Jew hunter, but at the same time polite, charming, and sometimes endearingly flawed.
Ooh, that's a bingo!
So your antagonist is, like all your other characters, a way of illuminating elements of your protagonist, and an opportunity to create a rich, complex being with inner, personal and extrapersonal conflict, their own characterization, true character, conscious and unconscious goals, and character arcs. You can see how story really is a structure through which you challenge your character to push through his limits in order to find his true character and reach his ultimate goal. I hope that helped. Thank you for watching, and do check back in for step 5 in the series where we cover dialogue. Bad dialogue is immediately off-putting when you read screenplays, so it's worth brushing up on the basics before sending your script out for feedback. Please like, subscribe, comment, share. Anything you want to know more about or could be clearer, just let me know. And maybe you disagree with some of what I've talked about. Let me know in the comments. Like you, I'm here to learn. See you next time.